All right, so we're going to call to order the May 20th, 2021 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
So in terms of roll call, we have 4 current appointed members and a youth member. So in terms of roll, Board Member Miles.
Here.
Board Member Dorsweiler.
Here.
Board Member Sharp. Can you hear us, Dustin?
Hold on. I forgot to unmute the room, so he's not hearing me. So say it again.
Board Member Sharp. You present?
Present, yeah, I'm here.
Okay. And Board Member Olson.
Present.
So youth member Kraft had indicated he was going to attend, and you don't see him on Zoom, do you, Dustin?
Nope. I
Okay.
do not.
So youth on board member Benjamin Kraft is not present, but 4 is a quorum, so we can conduct our business today. Yes, I would look to Allison. Can you confirm that our packet was posted and we provided notice of today's meeting?
Yes, I can confirm packet was posted and required notice of the meeting was provided.
So we do have the ability to move forward and consider today's agenda.
Okay. So we're going to move to approval of the minutes for April 29th, 2021.
I move to approve the minutes as read.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so been approved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Mr. Sharp in the affirmative there, Justin?
Yes. Sorry, guys. I was trying to figure out my unmute. I got it. We're good.
Okay. So that passes 4-0, and Mr. Sharp is unmuted. And that would bring us to the new business portion of our meeting. We have 3 public hearing items today.
Okay, so we'll first hear application V21-4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That application is filed by MGB Properties LLC, and they're requesting a number of variances. And just by way of background, we would explain that there is an administrative process by which if a landowner has a single lot or lot of record and they wish to split that one time, they can do that through an administrative lot split, but that lot split requires myself as zoning administrator to review the 2 lots and determine that both lots as proposed conform with all zoning ordinance requirements. And in this particular case, the proposed lot split that would split 110 from 116 South Penn would result in the creation of the southern lot being non-conforming. And so the first 2 variances that you see deal with minimum lot width, which is 50 feet, and the proposed southern lot's only 45 feet wide, and the other has to do with lot size. The minimum lot size in an R2 district is 6,000 square feet, and the southern lot in this case would be 4,604 square feet. And so because myself as zoning administrator could not approve that lot split administratively because the south lot doesn't conform into those areas, this has been brought to you to consider authorizing the lot split to create a lot that's 45 feet wide and 4,600 square feet. The other 3 items on there were items that we identified that were non-conforming. In our experience, lenders can sometimes be hesitant to loan on a property that's non-conforming because non-conforming generally means that you can't build it back exactly the way it is if it's more than 50% damaged by fire or flood or other natural disasters. So the other 4 variances dealing with lot coverage and dealing with front setback are being done to allow the properties to be rebuilt in their current location if they're more than 50% damaged. So This request is coming before you in order to allow a lot that's 10,624 square feet to be split into 2 zoning lots. And the property that we're talking about is lots 1 and 2, less than north 95 feet thereof in Block 7 of Oakdale Edition. And so the Oakdale Edition dates back to 1878, and the platted lots 1 and 2, were platted 50 feet wide and 201 feet deep, but the lots were oriented off of Iron Avenue, and there is a dwelling addressed as 722 East Iron, and so that was the first split of lots 1 and 2. And then this would be a proposed split of the remaining lots less that north 195 feet. And so there's, for whatever reason, historically, there's a single zoning lot and 2 separate dwellings occupy it. The dwelling at 116 South Penn is a 2-story home and has a footprint of 1,440 square feet. And the one to the north has a 1,640 square foot footprint and a very large garage behind. So we're looking at the 2 properties here side by side that currently occupy a single zoning lot. So the current owner applicant purchased this property from Randy and Kimberly Radke in July 2017. As far as our records go back, the Radkes has owned both dwellings on a single zoning lot, and we don't have any records that we could find of them ever being 2 separate lots. And so the request for the lot width and lot size variances would allow this 106-foot by 100-foot lot to be split and the lot sold separately as you see configured. As I noted, the other requested variances would allow the existing dwellings and garages to be rebuilt in their present location and configuration if they were more than 50% damaged. So staff was contacted, and there was an indication that the current owner was in the process of preparing this property for sale, and they wished to divide the zoning lot so the dwellings could be sold off separately to separate buyers. And so a plot plan depicting how that would be done was submitted to staff. We looked at it, identified what we saw were the nonconformities, and so this variance application was submitted requesting approval of variances needed to allow the property to be split. And so as we've summarized, we have a minimum lot size in R2 of 6,000 square feet, and one of the lots here is 4,600 square feet, and then a minimum lot width of 50 feet, and one of the proposed lots is only 45 feet. And so the minimum lot size and lot width variances would need to be approved to allow this property to be split as proposed. The other thing we noted is that they're relatively small lots, and the garages together with the house have lot coverage being over the 35% maximum in the R2 district, so we've made note of that. So as to the uniqueness, the applicant states that when they purchased the property, it already contained 2 separate residential units. They were not aware that that was a non-conforming situation, that they only became aware of that when they got ready to try to sell the lots separately. And this property's been occupied by 2 dwellings since our earliest building permit records, and they were certainly in place before the applicant purchased the property. We would agree that having 2 separate single-family residences on the same residential building lot is a unique situation, and the current conditions were not caused by the actions of the current owner or applicant. As far as impacts on neighbors, the applicant points out that this does not have any adverse effect on neighbors because this condition has existed for many years. There's not going to be any visual impact or use impact on neighbors. The average person driving by wouldn't know whether this is one lot or two lots, so there's not going to be any physical changes to the property. As to hardship, the applicant believes that failure to grant these variances will inhibit their ability to subsequently sell the two units separately, and they could incur a loss in market value if they're not able to sell them on two separate zoning lots. And so I think we would agree that the current non-conforming status, the grouping of the two homes together, depresses the potential value because it's more challenging to sell the two homes together than separately. We don't see any impact on public health, safety, and welfare. And as far as the impact of the general spirit and intent of the ordinance, these lots have been an established presence in the neighborhood, and so they're not increasing the density or changing any of the existing conditions. So as far as possible findings related to this application, staff finds that the property is unique because it contains two separate single-family residences on the same building lot. That condition's not shared by other properties in the neighborhood. The two residences have existed in their present condition and configuration for many years. The only physical change we can find is the detached garage that was built by the previous owner in 1991. All the existing conditions and setbacks would be maintained, so there should not be any additional adverse effects on neighboring owners. The current non-conforming status of the property, if continued, would limit its marketability and potential for resale, and the proposed lot sizes conform with the existing development pattern in the area. So your alternatives as it relates to this case would be to approve the variance application as requested, with or without any conditions. If the required findings of fact can be made, you could postpone action to a future meeting date if you feel additional information from the applicant or staff is required to reach a decision, or you could deny the applicant's variance request if you don't think findings of fact can be made to support a variance. We are supportive of the lot size, lot coverage, and setback variances being requested because they do not and will not affect the existing physical layout and conditions on the property. We would recommend one condition of approval to ensure that there's no changes, and that would be that if the lot configuration and split is approved, that use of the lot shall be limited to single-family dwellings and not modified from that use. So Dustin, in the packet, there was kind of a table that just kind of summarized the existing requirements and what was being proposed. It was as an attachment to the application that had kind of a summary table. So it should be right after the application. Okay, so right there. So this is the best way to graphically just summarize kind of step by step what we're looking at. So the general requirement is 50 feet for lot width. The north lot has that. The southern lot does not. The same for lot area. And then you can see two deviations for lot coverage, and then you can see the deviations for, minor deviations for front yard setback. But you can see that on the whole, both of these lots would conform with most R2 district requirements. It's primarily the lot width and lot area of the southern lot that brings us today for a variance, because it's not a lot split that staff could prove administratively. So with that, staff would be open to any questions, and I believe the owners here, if you have questions of them.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. Does the applicant want to make any statements? No. Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
Okay. For me, this one's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's agree that it's non-conforming, but it wasn't based on anything that this applicant's done, and I do agree that if we don't do the variance, that if something would happen to the property at 116, then they're not going to be able to rebuild, and we're going to have a vacant lot sitting around, so.
And if you've driven by, there is a vacant lot at 120 South Penn. That was a dilapidated house that was removed. And so in terms of, and I believe Mr. Hers had one interested neighbor that came in, but they were, for some reason, they thought this was a proposal to build something new on the vacant lot at 120. Is that correct, Destin?
Correct. I'll try to pull up this picture of that just so people can see the vacant lot. .120 is, I think it's
I believe it's that one right there.
this structure that is shown in the aerial photograph has since been demolished, and so this is a vacant lot. And so one of the neighbors was concerned that all of this activity that was shown on the plan, these two structures, was all happening on this single lot, and he didn't see how that would fit. And we explained that it wouldn't fit, and that it's a different property that we're looking at, and then he was fine.
Okay. So we'll take this to comments by interested citizens. Is there anybody else online or anybody in the audience?
You have any?
I don't see anybody online, so
All right.
if there's nobody from the audience.
Okay, we're going to close public comment then and take this back to discussion. Thoughts?
I don't have any comments,
Okay.
but I'll make a motion.
Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I move that the board approves the variance application with the condition that the lots be limited to single-family dwellings.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, so it has been moved, so application V21-4 has been approved.
So we'll get you a letter on that and a copy in the title company so they know.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. So that brings us to application V21-5.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself on this application due to a financial interest.
And that does not affect our quorum or our ability to operate. So we can still operate with 3 members if we started the meeting with 4. So.
Okay.
And Mr. Hers is going to try to multitask this one. This is an application that was referred to this body by the Planning Commission, and it's a request filed by Caitlin Barnes requesting a number of dimensional requirements, variances from dimensional requirements that are minimum dimensions for having a group daycare home location. And the first 2 dealing with lot width and lot size are similar to the property that we just looked at, and the other 2 are similar to the application we just looked at, are existing conditions that are non-conforming that might jeopardize the ability to rebuild. And so the request is coming to you in order to allow a group daycare home to be established on this property, which is at 133 South Phillips, in the vicinity of the Cottonwood Elementary School. So I'll let Mr. Hers do the presentation.
Thank you. So the property that is the subject of this variance request is the south 45 feet of lots 18 and 20 of the University Place. And so what that means is we have a 45-foot wide lot that's 100 feet deep, as shown on the screen here. So this is an aerial photo of the applicant's property, and what we're doing is we are looking at a number of variances in order to allow the Planning Commission to consider a potential group daycare home at this facility. And how this came up is the applicant was operating a group daycare at 1107 West State Street, and at that daycare she provided care for 12 children, and her lease was up and her landlord told her that she had to find another location, and she had 60 days to do it. And this was the option that she was able to identify with our tight housing market that would be something that she could move into in the time frame that she had. And so she's trying to make this work for a group daycare home as well as her personal residence. So on April 6th of 2021, this year, she presented a conditional use permit application to the Planning Commission. And at that Planning Commission meeting, it was identified by staff that there were a number of limitations that the property had that prohibited the Planning Commission from taking action on her proposed conditional use permit. And some of those limitations we've identified in a table that I'll pull up on the screen so everybody can have a visual representation. All right. So similar to the last agenda item, because we have so many variances that are tied to these particular items, we made some tables that show the comparison between the requirements that are required by the zoning district and the existing or proposed conditions with the variances that are being proposed. So in this case, we have a lot that has 45 feet of width, which is substandard to the 50-foot width requirement. We do meet the 100-foot depth requirement. And the biggest reason we're here is because the zoning code specifically requires that group daycare homes be at least 6,000 square feet, and the property has a total square footage of 4,500, so we're 1,500 square feet short. And so that's the genesis of the variance request, because everything else is what we would call pre-existing non-conforming, meaning it could remain in perpetuity, but if there ever were an event where the existing structures were damaged either by fire or some other catastrophe, 50% or more, they could not be rebuilt. And so while we're coming before you, the applicant decided to have her existing conditions made conforming through a variance process. And so in addition to the width and minimum lot area variances, she's also asking for a variance to the maximum lot coverage and the front yard setback. And as we get into it a little bit more, if the Planning Commission were to approve a conditional use permit for her group daycare home, she would also like relief from the strict application of the off-street parking, which we'll get into later on in the report. So this is, I'll try to turn this. This is a survey of the property. This is South Phillips Street. So you can see the front yard area, and that's a little bit substandard. And then what this survey doesn't show, but if you go to aerial photo, you'll see is there is a two-car garage that was constructed in 1940 towards the rear of the property. And it's probably more important for the Planning Commission when they consider her group daycare home, but it makes the configuration of her property a little bit unique, where she doesn't have a traditional rear yard. So in looking at the uniqueness of the property, the property is a little bit unique and that the neighborhood is an older neighborhood that was platted in the late 1800s, and this particular building was built in 1910, and all of the surrounding buildings were also built in the early 1900s. And so what we have is a development pattern that, while it's unique to Salina as a whole, it's not unique to the neighborhood, because you can see we have a lot of other smaller lots based on the era in which the buildings and the development took place. And looking at the adverse effects on the neighbors, the property has largely gone unchanged since it was developed in 1910. The only change that has occurred since then was the demolition of a previous garage and the erection of the new garage in 1940. And the applicant is looking to keep the existing conditions the same as they have historically been. The only change would be a proposed fenced-in area around the front and sides of the property. There is an existing 4-foot chain link fence along the south property line that the applicant plans to join onto to the rest of the front yard area. In looking at the unnecessary hardship, the property has a lot of non-conforming characteristics that are substandard, specifically the lot width, the lot size, the lot coverage that exceeds 35%, and the front yard setback. And all of these conditions are what we would call pre-existing non-conforming, or conditions that were already prevalent with the site or existing on the site when the applicant bought the property. And so they are not a creation of her doing, but have been in existence for over 100 years. And the only way that the applicant could meet the strict application of the ordinances and all of the setback and lot coverage and lot size requirements would be to acquire one or more of the adjacent properties, demolish the structures, and rebuild a new property or a new dwelling on the property, which staff would view as a financial hardship, and also would take or remove an existing dwelling when the city of Salina is currently going through a housing crisis where we have a shortage of housing, which would be not only a hardship on the applicant, but a hardship on the community. In looking at the effect on public health and safety, staff would agree with the applicant that any effects from the requested variances will be localized and will not impact the general public, and that approval of the requested variances will not increase the risk of fire spread, negatively impact drainage, or obstruct visibility or at the street intersections. And then lastly, in looking at the general spirit and intent of the requirements, the approval of the requested variances would not undermine the general spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance if the use of the property is limited to single-family residences with an accessory group daycare home, if the Planning Commission were to approve the applicant's conditional use permit request. All of the other zoning requirements are complied with. The requested variances would simply ratify the existing conditions of the site and would not result in overcrowding or undermine the intent of the zoning regulations. So that deals with all of the, what we call the bulk regulations, those variances that are tied to the property specifically. As I mentioned earlier on, there was also a request by the applicant that should all of these variances be approved, which would allow her to go before the Planning Commission for them to consider a conditional use permit for a group daycare home, she would also request a variance for the off-street parking requirements. So we'll walk through those real quick. And what the off-street parking regulations require is 2 off-street parking spaces for each dwelling unit within the city of Salina. So as it stands today, the existing property is conforming in that she has a 2-car garage that has a capacity for 2 off-street parking spaces. That garage is accessed from an alley on the south side of her house and has a 13-foot deep drive that's 26 feet wide. So she does have sufficient off-street parking for the property as long as it's used as a single-family dwelling. The issue that she's running into is if the Planning Commission were to approve a conditional use permit, she's also required to have one off-street parking space for her assistant care provider. Group daycare homes are required to not only have the resident of the house watch over the kids, but also requires a second assistant to help and assist with the care of the children. And so the code requires a third off-street parking space. And this is where it becomes a little more complicated. What she would prefer, what she has in mind, is having the two-car garage be used by her and her assistant. She is the only resident of the property, and she only has one personal vehicle, and therefore she only needs one off-street parking space, and so she would have a parking space available for her assistant. And the reason she would like to have the assistant park in the garage in lieu of the driveway is she would like to keep the driveway open for parents to swing in perpendicular to the garage, because it's only 13 feet deep between the garage and the alley, and drop kids off, and they can go in and out of the structure through a back door. So the plan is, in order to safely allow children to get in and out of the daycare, is to drop them off by the back door, which is relatively close to the loading and loading spot that she is proposing, and allowing children to go in and out that way. Now, the reason this is problematic is because it requires one of the two off-street parking spaces that is required by the zoning regulations to be allocated to the care assistant. And so that is something that the board would also need to approve. And so with that, we do have a couple of alternatives here, 3 of them. The board may approve the requested variances with or without any conditions if the required findings of fact can be made. The board may postpone action on the application if the board finds that additional information is required to reach a decision on the application. Number 3, the board may deny the applicant's variance request if the required findings of fact cannot be made. And the purposes of the requested variances are to ratify the existing conditions and allow the Planning Commission to consider the applicant's proposed conditional use permit application. Whether or not the subject property is a suitable location for the group daycare home is the decision of the Planning Commission and not part of the Board of Zoning Appeals decision. Because the subject property is comparable and compatible with the other residential properties in the neighborhood and has remained largely unchanged for over 100 years, staff would recommend that the applicant's variance request be approved as requested. If the board feels the appropriate findings of fact can be made, staff would recommend that the board approve the variance request as proposed, along with the applicant's request for relief from the strict application of the off-street parking regulations. In the event that the Planning Commission were to approve the applicant's group daycare home application, staff would recommend that approval be limited to this operation or applicant. It would not be transferable to another operator. So, just as a quick recap, what the role of the Board of Zoning Appeals is in this case is you're looking at the site and the existing lot coverage, the setback requirements, lot size, and proposed off-street parking if it were to be approved by the group daycare home, and seeing if the site is if these variances are conducive for the site and that there's proper uniqueness, limited effects on the neighbors and the public, as well as unnecessary hardship should the variances not be allowed. The actual approval or consideration of the group daycare home will be the responsibility of the Planning Commission. And so even though this decision does impact the applicant's ability to finish or apply for, or for the Planning Commission rather to consider the group daycare home, that is a decision that's independent of your review today. And so if you were to approve the parking variance subject to the Planning Commission's approval of the conditional use permit, that recommendation of that special condition would be a recommendation to the Planning Commission, and it would be essentially their condition of approval if they were to approve the conditional use permit. So now that I've made that really confusing, are there any questions? It's a two-step process, and so they're tied together and they're correlated, but you're not making a decision on the actual group daycare home.
Okay. Questions for staff?
One way to look at it, similar to the previous case, in the previous case, I, as zoning administrator, couldn't administratively approve the lot split because one of the lots didn't conform to the dimensional requirements, and the Planning Commission was in the same role that they could not approve a conditional use permit for group daycare home because there were two dimensional requirements that were not met. Should the Board of Zoning Appeals grant relief from those dimensional requirements, then the Planning Commission could take that up. You kind of passed over Dustin, the neighbor who came in and was concerned about on-street parking. Can you explain how what is being proposed here relates or would not relate to on-street parking?
Sure. So there was a neighbor that received notification as part of this variance application and came in and spoke with staff. And their primary concerns were concerns that are probably more related to the proposed group daycare home that would be the consideration of the Planning Commission and not necessarily a consideration of the Board of Zoning Appeals. But there is some overlap in that the individual was concerned about off-street parking and the limited amount that this property has, and that if a group daycare home was approved or were to be approved on this site, that it would cause additional congestion or on-street parking in the neighborhood. And so that would be his concern, is that if the Planning Commission were to have the opportunity to consider the conditional use permit and they were to approve it, that the additional children that would be allowed for the group daycare home would cause additional on-street parking. And so that would be the concern of one of the neighbors. The applicant is stating that she has one vehicle and that she's only resident of the property, and so that the detached garage could be used for her and her assistant, which would limit or eliminate any on-street parking in terms of either her or her assistant. The only time they would have on-street parking would be if there were additional visitors or multiple parents arriving at the same time, where not all the kids could be loaded and unloaded in the proposed unloading area on the north side of the alley between the alley and the garage. Were there any other things that we needed to discuss, Dean, that you noticed?
No, I think I was just trying to point out the distinction between picking up and dropping off and actual parking.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon, whether it's a preschool or daycare, that you have a certain time of day where vehicles come and their children are picked up or they're dropped off, but those cars don't stay there and remain in the street.
Yeah, and I guess we would also point out, even though it's not completely related, it's more related to the conditional use permit, which this board is not considering, is we are about a half a block away from the elementary school, and so I'm sure there is some periodic congestion in the area, and kids are getting picked up from school and things like that. But that's an independent situation from the applicant's situation.
Okay. Thank you. Questions for staff?
I was curious, at this facility, how many kids are allowed to be there? What's the occupancy of this center?
Right. So currently, with what we call a licensed daycare, allows for up to 10 children to be allowed on the site, or to be cared for at the site, rather. And a group daycare home classification allows for additional children, so a total of 12. And so the difference is you have 2 additional children, and you also have an additional care provider. So if the Planning Commission were to either not have the opportunity to consider the conditional use permit, or if they were to decide that that would not be allowed here, or should not be allowed here, that the site's not conducive for that kind of conditional use permit, then the applicant would still have the ability to have a licensed daycare home. She has that right as a permitted right of ability for a daycare.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Would the applicant like to make a statement, or are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, if you can come up to the podium, and then please state name and address.
Caitlin Barnes, 133 South Phillips Avenue. I can make a statement, or Leanne is the Child Care County Surveyor, and she's also here just in support of the application. So, I'm requesting this. It's only 2 additional children. I'm not asking for 10 additional children in my house. Because I'm the only person living there, I feel like I can manage a house as well as a group daycare home. We still have plenty of space. We have more space than we actually had in our previous building inside for children. We've been operating since April 1st out of this building with limited children because we don't have the conditional use permit yet, and we've had no issues with parking in the garage or people picking up, dropping off. Like Dustin said, the only time that we usually have someone park out on the street is if somebody is visiting, if we have like somebody from ICD visiting a child or somebody like that. And other than that, there's really been no congestion. I've had no complaints from the neighbors. The only neighbors, I've talked to 3 of them. All of them seem to be in support. I've gotten no comments other than congratulations and good luck.
And you were running a group daycare prior to this. The
Yes.
situation is that your lease was up and you had to move out.
Yeah, he did not give me the option to renew my lease. So I had 60 days to find a place, get it set up for daycare, and move everything.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay.
Thank you.
So, comments from the public?
I don't have anyone online unless there's anybody in the room that would like to speak.
Okay. Anybody in public want to speak? Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Leanne Montoy, Child Care Licensing Coordinator, Saline County Health Department. I've been to the facility twice, and there was no parking on the street at all by staff or anyone except me when I arrived. I'd just like you to encourage you to think about, neighborhoods is where children belong, and that's where care should be provided, not big commercial areas or industrial areas. I mean, children belong in our neighborhoods. And it is only 2 additional children. Dustin was correct. She could apply for a license if this isn't granted, but that will place 4 employees out of a job. And she would be licensed for 12 children, but she also offers some care on the weekend, so it would affect more than 2 families. It could affect several families that would then be without childcare, which is kind of like our housing market, very hard to find in our community. And, unfortunately, when she was put in this rush, and myself and building services and the fire department, we all went out and did a consultation, and, she had to buy the house quickly, and it kind of was after the fact that these, problems kind of came to light, and so she'd already purchased the property. And I just think I just think for the benefit of the children and keeping her staff employed and for the community that, I hope you'll strongly consider her application.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? And since no other comments from the public, we're going to close the public comment section of it, take it back to discussion of the board, so.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is that we're thinking about whether, we're not deciding whether it should be like the daycare itself, because that's the planning commission doing it. And I think that this is pretty similar to the one that we already discussed earlier today, and I don't see anything really wrong with this.
Thank you.
I would concur with his statements.
Yep. So, and since I said on the planning commission also, this is one that does come back to us, and one of the things that we are looking at, not saying that it's going to be approved, is that the conditional use is for this applicant only, so that if she would move and not be there, it's no longer going to be used for a group daycare at that point in time, which is also part of the R2 zoning. Correct?
Yeah.
So kind of like where we talked about on the first one, where we were limiting it to the R1 because of the lot size, this would be a situation where it would be zoned R2 strictly for this applicant, and then it would revert back if this applicant was no longer at that property. So on my end of it, I think that, allowing these variances definitely help, and again, because of childcare in the city and everything else, and in this neighborhood, it's close to the schools, they're able to do that. And having one person watch 10 compared to two people watching 12, I think is definitely a better volume number. So, do we have a motion for this application?
I move that the board approve the requested variances as proposed, along with the applicant's request for relief from the strict application of the off-street parking regulations. I would also include in that motion that this be limited to this operator/applicant and would not be transferable to another operator.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay,
That
so,
passes 3-0 with Board Member Miles recusing herself.
yep. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So that takes us to application V21-6.
So V21-6 is an application that's been filed by Kansas Wesleyan University. And again, it's one of those cases when you're dealing with lots that are have restrictions on their dimensions. In this case, a 40-foot lot, then there's usually multiple variances that come into play. So in this particular case, this is a property that's located at the southwest corner of Highland and Claflin, and it's a platted lot that has dimensions of 40 by 100 feet. And so there are minimum lot width, minimum lot area, front yard setback variances that are being requested in order to allow construction of 3 22-foot by 24-foot two-story housing units on the property. And again, we're talking about the property that's the east 100 feet of a lot 75 on Highland Avenue, and the street address is 1600 Highland. And as Mr. Hers is showing you the location on the aerial photo, you're seeing a large two-story home that was there that is now no longer there. So the lot in question is vacant as a result of that house being removed. So I'll turn this over to Mr. Hers for a further report.
So this property is part of the subdivision that is named the grounds of Kansas Wesleyan University, which is platted in 1886. So just like the last application, we're dealing with older property here, a property that was originally platted in the 1800s, there was a two-story duplex on the site that was recently demolished. That particular duplex was constructed in 1940 but had become dilapidated, and so the university has demolished it. And what they're looking to do is to add an innovative housing product for student housing, a specific type of multifamily on their campus as they continue to fill it in and grow to the west. And this would be the first phase of a multi-phase village, as we're calling it, sort of a cottage-style village with multiple smaller dwellings of 528 square feet. And so I'll show you kind of a site plan. I'll show you the site plan first. The site plan of what we're looking at. So here we see the 3 individual units and how they would fit on the site. And because the site is a smaller site of only 40 or 4,000 square feet, the 3 units require a number of setbacks. And specifically, we've charted them out again so that you could see what those setbacks are. The required lot width is 60 feet, but we have a pre-existing lot of record that's only 40 feet wide. Here in the bold, we do meet the minimum lot depth requirement of 100 feet, and the minimum lot area is required to be at least 6,000, with each unit having at least 3,000 square feet with no, so I'll read that because it gets confusing otherwise. So the code requires that each dwelling unit have at least 3,000 square feet of area and that no lot be less than 6,000 square feet. So we are less than 6,000 square feet. However, because we have 3 units, each of those units are required to have 3,000 square feet of area to them. So really, we should have a lot of 9,000. So we're looking at a variance to allow a dwelling unit with a square footage per dwelling of 1,333. So that's really what we're asking for there. We're also asking for setback variances along Claflin and Highland. And so if we look at the site plan, we can see that we have substandard setbacks on Highland as well as Claflin. And so in order for these 3 units to be built, the variances that were shown on the chart have to be first approved. And so this, like the last application, is a 2-step process. In order for the proposed dwellings to be constructed, the applicant, Kansas Wesleyan University, will have to first have the requested variances all be approved, and that would allow for the applicant, Kansas Wesleyan, to go before the Planning Commission for a conditional use permit. And the reason the conditional use permit is required is because the R2 zoning district does not allow for multifamily student housing, which is the product or the type of housing that's being proposed. So step 1 is the board would have to approve the requested variances. Step 2 is the Planning Commission would have to approve the actual conditional use to allow for the multifamily housing that's being proposed, which, just like with the last application, your concern is going to be the actual variances themselves, and the Planning Commission will then concern themselves with the conditional use permit application. So in looking at the uniqueness of the property, the property is unique because it is a non-conforming platted lot of record. It's located in a corner with 2 front yards. Corner lots are notoriously difficult to develop, especially if they're smaller, because you have front yard setback requirements on both corners or on both front yards. And while the 4,000 square foot lot is somewhat unique in the early 1900s, in which when this development all happened, it is truly unique by modern standards when compared to most platted residential lots within Salina today. And so looking at the adverse effects on the neighbors, Kansas Westland owns everything around them, so there are no other neighbors. So any negative impacts would be self-inflicted or would be imposed upon themselves. And looking at necessary hardship, not granting the requested variances, particularly the minimum lot area requirement per dwelling unit, which is 3,000 square feet per unit, will cause an unnecessary hardship on the applicant because the only way the applicant could meet these requirements would be to demolish additional structures and redevelop the property in accordance to the R2 district standards. This would place unnecessary financial hardship on the applicant and remove existing dwelling units from the community when housing is in such high demand. And that is also true not only for the community but for Kansas Westland, as their enrollment has been growing, and so they're in need of student housing. In looking at the adverse effects on the health, safety, and welfare of the community, the approval of the requested variances will not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the community because the proposed development will not increase the risk of fire spread, negatively impact site runoff or drainage patterns, or obstruct the visibility of the traveling public. Any effects will be localized to the KWU campus and will not impact the health, safety, and general welfare. And looking at the general spirit of intent, the approval of the requested variances would not undermine the general spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance because the proposed student housing units are compatible infill development that would put a vacant lot back into productive use. Housing is currently a critical need in the Salina community, and the student housing is an important part of that need. While the proposed cottage-style housing project is unique to Salina, the proposed dwellings are phase one of a larger student housing village being planned for the west side along Highland. So the long-term idea, the long-term goal that Kansas Westland has is to continue this style of cottage student housing in a clustered form throughout the west side of Highland on the west edge of their campus. And so that the idea is that this would be a student housing project that would be successful, that they could replicate to add student housing. Alternatives, the board may approve the requested variances with or without any conditions if the required findings of fact can be made. The board may postpone action on the application if the board finds the additional information is required to reach a decision on the application. Number 3, the board may deny the applicant's variance requests if the required findings of fact cannot be made. The purposes of the requested variances are to allow the Planning Commission to consider the applicant's conditional use permit application for multifamily student housing on an R2 zone property. Again, whether or not the subject property is a suitable location for multifamily student housing is a decision for the Planning Commission and not part of the Board of Zoning Appeals decision. The focus of the board should be on the physical constraints of the lot itself and the proposed variances, and if they are warranted for the site. Because the conditions creating the need for the lot size and setback relief were not created by Kansas Westland, and that Kansas Westland's plan is compatible with typical college campus environments, staff would recommend that the Kansas Westland variance requests be approved as requested. And with that, staff will have to take any questions. One thing I guess I would note, not that it pertains to the variance request specifically, because it deals with the conditional use permit that could potentially go to the Planning Commission, is off-street parking for the proposed structures would be surplus campus parking that Kansas Westland currently has. So Kansas Westland currently has a surplus of campus parking, and so those parking stalls would be available to students were they to reside here. And there's also some potential for additional new parking stalls in a future project that Kansas Westland is looking at. That's just kind of a side note and not really part of this discussion per se, but I wanted to just kind of get it out there so that if you are concerned about that, it's not something that needs to be addressed. So we'll take any questions that you might have.
Questions for staff? Okay.
No.
So can we hear from the applicant?
Hi, I'm Rhonda Beatty. I'm the CFO at Kansas Wesleyan, 2218 Pheasant Lane. We are just extremely excited about the potential for this. We are full, and we have our student count continues to grow. So we're trying to find some alternatives to the traditional dorm, to one, give some excitement to our student life, and to give a new look, a fresh look to our campus. So that's why this is really important to us, and we're very excited to bring something new to the city.
Okay, thank you. I do have a quick question. So while you're there, since we did bring it up from staff, so the surplus parking, can you bring up that aerial photo again? So on the current lot that was there, so there were 8 people staying in that,
Not since we have owned it.
right, but at one point there were up to 8, and now we're looking at up to 15 on this
Right.
lot. So where is the surplus parking in the,
Can you go out a little bit? So we have parking. This is a dorm. There's parking lots to the south of that. Then there's a huge parking lot that's here behind Pioneer Hall. There's also parking behind the dorms here. This is where we're looking at expanding our parking. We demolished a house on this lot too.
gotcha. So that's planned parking. Okay,
There's also parking we own. This is university property too,
okay,
and has parking spaces as well.
okay. So can students currently park there in that lot? Okay. And then with that, so, and I know like at, say, like at Kansas State University, you have to have a parking,
We do not have any parking permit requirements. We have parking permits. That's just so that if something happens to a vehicle, we can identify it. We do not charge our students for parking. All our parking is free.
okay. But they do have something that says they're Kansas Wesleyan parking, so if they're in those areas, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, no other questions for the applicant, then we're going to take this to public comment. So is there anybody?
We have a number of people on Zoom. I think all of them are with Kansas Wesleyan, so I'm not sure if any of them want to add to what Rhonda has shared with us, but it doesn't look like it.
Micro mansions.
We do have a couple of individuals with micro mansions, which is the building product that's being proposed that we showed you.
Oh, gotcha, okay. Anybody have any questions, board, for even the product? Okay, all right, so we're going to close public comment, and we're going to take it to discussion of the board. Thoughts?
I think it seems like a good use of the space for student housing.
Okay.
I'd say it's much more spacious than like a typical dorm. I think it's good.
Okay.
Basically, I don't think there's any problem with like overcrowding, basically.
Okay. Okay. I think it's a good idea. I mean, they're always looking for housing. I think this is kind of an interesting product to have on a college campus. Get you away from the traditional dorm type situation. And if I was that age again in that situation, I'd want to not be in the dorm and something more like this. So I think it's a good product. Okay. No other comments? Then do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the requested variances.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been motioned and seconded, so all in favor, say aye.
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 So application V21-6 has been approved.
So just, it can be confusing, like Mr. Hers said, it's a two-step process. So on item 3.2 and item 3.3, based on the action that this board has taken, you have made the group daycare home and these student housing units eligible for consideration by the Planning Commission at their next meeting, which will be June 1st. So we will be able to report to the Planning Commission that you have reviewed this and found that the dimensions of the lots in question are workable for the proposed uses.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure where we are as far as the deadline goes, but for filing cases, but we know that Madison will not be able to participate through the summer months, and so essentially we've communicated to the city commissioner and city clerk as best we can of our need for additional members. So until we get at least a quorum that we can attend, then we're probably just not going to schedule any meetings, and rather than postponing or pushing applicants along, we'll just tell them that they're, at this time, we can't consider any variance applications until we have a quorum of at least 4 participating members on the board. So at this point, we don't anticipate having a meeting in June, and we'll keep communicating with the city commission and city clerk to see if we can recruit and retain some board members.
And I do have a question on that. So is there anybody within the city that's kind of designated to try to help fill these positions, that's out looking to try to bring people in to kind of help fill
Well,
this board or any other boards?
In theory, it's the 5 city commissioners who are supposed to be out trying to recruit members to serve on local boards and commissions. And so that's why we have communicated to them, and we will make that communication again. But you will see periodically they'll be in the newspaper or different other advertising places. It just says these are our current board, city commission appointed boards and commissions, and that we're seeking volunteers to serve. And it's not just these boards. We have an animal control advisory board. We have other boards, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. So there's a lot of spots for which volunteers are sought, and so we're just going to put the word out again. But it's really the 5 city commissioners who are supposed to be seeking out persons to serve.
It just seems like that you've got a lot of openings and a lot of boards and commissions that are trying to be filled, and you have 5 commissioners that are trying to hopefully fill those. It almost seems like if there's that many, that there should maybe be somebody that's dedicated to looking at those positions and trying to find people or find applications to do that.
Well, you saw that when the city commission had an opening, there were like 11 people who put their names in for consideration. So if we can get some of those people to put their names in for consideration for other boards and commissions, then maybe we can get somewhere. But as of now, I don't anticipate we'll be having a meeting in June, and we'll wish board member Miles the best.
Thanks.
Yes, congratulations. All right, so that brings us to public forum. Any comments from public?
Does not appear anyone is interested in speaking at the moment.
So that would bring us up to a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn our meeting.
Second.
So been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 All right, thank you, everybody.